And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thank you so much for joining us. And it is a delight to have Leilani Dowding, who went from warm LA to cold UK, I think, on your last post. It's great to have you, Leilani. Thank you.
No, thanks for having me on. It was quite a few years ago I came back from LA, but I was just really hoping that this global warming thing was going to make us be like in the Mediterranean here, but it didn't happen, did it? So I'm just freezing at the moment.
It could be worse. It could be in Virginia and everything's frozen there. So it could be much worse.
Ah, okay.
Just made you feel better. Just starting on a happy note. Could always be worse.
Yeah, that's true.
Although I think some of the stories we'll get into, I'm not 100% sure about that. But make sure that's Leilani's handle on X on Twitter. And I'm sure many of you are following her. But if you're not, make sure and do. So let's jump in with something for the US viewers for the War and Posse. Lots been happening stateside. And this is everything happening stateside seems to be positive. So let's start with this, which is RFK giving his kind of speech, acceptance speech, and telling President Trump how grateful he is actually for the position he's been given. So here's RFK.
For 20 years, I've gotten up every morning on my knees and prayed that God would put me in a position where I could end the childhood chronic disease epidemic in this country. On August 23rd of last year, God sent me President Trump. All right. And he gave He's now given me, he's kept every promise that he's made to me. He's kept his word in every account and gone way beyond it. I'm so grateful to you, Mr. President. A lot of people told me that I couldn't trust President Trump. I better get it in writing. And we did a handshake, and everything that he told me he was going to do, he has done. Right. And I'm so grateful to him, and I've told you before, I genuinely believe that you are a pivotal historical figure, and you are going to transform this country.
Wow. So I watched, I think it was 51 votes in the Senate. It was 47 against whenever I saw that, whenever they had the going from the committee to the Senate voted and he put his hand. I saw Babylon B swearing allegiance on a 16-ounce steak, which, but RFK, Maha, what are your thoughts whenever you saw RFK, who was one of them, probably the more difficult nominations to get through, I think, the process?
I'm so happy about this. I was really worried when I saw the way they were grilling him, those big farmer shills were grilling him. I was concerned. I was really, really worried about it. So, it's really wonderful to see that he's got in. And I do think he is going to make America healthy again. I think, he's really been on this path for the longest time. He's been fighting for children's health, everybody's health, for his career. And it's just really wonderful to see he's in. He's just the whole journey that he's gone through, and how bad the Democrats were to him. It just really makes me happy. So when I saw that news, I was so excited. And the speech itself, it's wonderful, because I do think a lot of people probably did say you can't trust this guy. He's and for him to say that and to go out there, and we've seen Dana White do it as well. We've seen Dana White and a lot of people that are close to Trump, that have been around Trump for a long time, do seem to give him that credit that he does do what he says he's going to do.
And he's one. I mean, one, it was the warmth that you get there, the appreciation, because this is something that RFK has wanted to do for decades. But then there's not just his nominee, but every single one of President Trump's nominees that have gone through. Matt Gaetz being the only one that didn't, but everyone that went through to the committee has gone through and been voted for. And Kash Patel's obviously the one we are still waiting for, although he could be actually in by the time this goes out, recording this 24 hours before. But yeah, what do you think? Everyone he's put in seems to have gone forward, and there does seem to be and energy. And I think Mitch McConnell was the only senator who's really voted against really all of them.
Well, again, I'm so absolutely excited about all of it. I was worried with all of the, like Tulsi as well. I was worried about. And I'm still, on edge. I really hope Cash gets in, but Cash Patel gets in. But it does concern me because these, they can be vicious. They can be real vicious, and the rhinos can be vicious as well. So, for it to have gone this way, I'm really, really happy about it. And I am a little embarrassed that I am an American citizen, but I don't fully understand the way it all happens. But when I look at, the deputy health secretary we had the last time, the man, the cross-dresser, it's like if Robert Kennedy can't get in when, he's fit, he's been really pushing health. Look at him he's in his 70s and he's just a picture of health to me. So, that's one when you want to see, being in charge of health there.
Yeah, when they put RFK beside that other thing, then I actually think, what this is what you want. This is health. This is health, and this is exactly what you want. Someone leading the department, and they actually understand the issue, which sadly in the UK we don't have. I mean, America, they look at putting experts in heading up the departments, but in the UK, it seems to be government ministers are handed a brief, and they don't really know anything about that, and they just do it because that's what they're supposed to do. And it seems as though what President Trump was doing is so much better than what we have in the UK.
And it's scary to me. Look at our health secretary, that woman that they've just put in.
Yeah.
I think she's the health secretary. It's just, it is really scary. You've got the people in charge of education that know nothing about education. You've got people in charge of health that know nothing about health. All the departments, you have people that really don't have a clue. They've just been, an MP, a councillor, and even I think in Labour right now, there's only 3 people that know anything about farming in the government. And so you've got all this legislation with the farmers that, and they have no real clue or any idea. And that's what's really scary to me. And now we have a president that actually knows how to run successful businesses, which is, that's what you need with America. You need somebody that understands how to run something huge. You can't just have what we've got, like in this country, a human rights lawyer that's done a poor job at that's not cared about the British people, So I think America's looking really positive right now. I'm very, very envious, actually. I'm very envious. And I hope some of the sense trickles over to the UK. I really do.
We definitely need some of it. We need our own Doge here in the UK to actually reform. There's so much happening over there.
Yeah.
But let's jump on to a weird UK story. This COVID-19 day of reflection. And here it is. Government announces COVID-19 day of reflection 2025. A UK-wide day of reflection will take place on Sunday, the 9th of March, 2025. And you had some thoughts on this. And it's a weird from a government, as it would be weird from the Tories, who forced this upon all of us. And it's a bit sick and perverse, isn't it, really, having this now?
I actually think that we need to reflect on the measures. We need to reflect on the measures that were put in by the Conservatives, the lockdowns, the mandates for the NHS workers and the care workers, the 40,000 care workers who lost their jobs for not taking a jab. We need to look at all the measures. We need to remember the people that weren't allowed to be with their loved ones when they died. We need to remember the people that couldn't go to the funerals of their loved ones, when you couldn't hold your family's hand as you lowered the person into their grave. Those are the things that we should be remembering, put down and set out by the Conservative government, the fake Conservative Tory government. But we also need to remember on this Remembrance Day that Labour wanted much longer and harder measures than what the Conservatives wanted. They weren't opposing it. They were no opposition. They wanted it. They wanted it to be sooner. They wanted lockdown sooner, and they wanted the measures to be even harder. So, I think that's what we've got to be remembering about COVID-19, the measures that went in place and the lies and the propaganda and the brainwashing and the divisiveness set about by politicians, by the mainstream media, and by celebrities that went in and tried to encourage people to do things for a bit of cash.
No, completely. And we're going to think today we're going to focus on a lot. I mean, Leilani puts up a lot of information up on her on her Twitter, including about her chickens, which you won't cover today. Um, but I want to ask you your hat. How do people get your hat?
Oh, right. So I do have the link on my Twitter pinned up there. Leilunicollection.uk if you want to make England great again. I've got that. I've got, what? I've also got this is actually my favorite. I probably should have worn this today.
Clown World.
My clown world one. So it's just like a little nod to somebody when you're in the supermarkets. It's a little hint, who's they're on your team.
Looks good. People can go and click on that link and we'll stick it in the description to make use of it. But yeah, so we're going to all different stories all over to give you a reflection and overview of I think what's been happening. And here is what happens now when you get a bus. It's all very different. It's not no after you. The English system seemed to have been utterly abandoned for this.
One behind, there's one behind. Look. Nah, man. See, you know what? I'd have left him. I'd have just gone, man. Oh, God. Look. How could you be doing this? There is one behind. There's another one there. Where? There's one there. Terrible. Come on. Embarrassing. It's right there, one there.
Seems that we have a different. It's like the pictures I see in my local train station saying, exposing yourself is not acceptable and you'll be punished. Holy shit. When did you have to be told that actually that was wrong?
When did you have to have those kinds of notices up everywhere? And it's like, I remember when people used to form a queue. They had manners. They'd form a queue. You'd get on in a civilized way. I think Dave Atherton posted that one, and I posted another one from somewhere else. I think 2 days ago. Same thing, just people piling on, trying to get on the bus, pushing each other out the way. No regard for anybody. I think there was somebody shouting, "Watch out! There's an elderly lady" or something like that. But no one cared. It was just a pile-on, and it's like. It reminds me of sometimes, when you look at these movies or see these documentaries of traveling in like third world countries where it's just pile on, next thing we're going to see people strapped on the top of the buses or something. It's like, what is going on? We're losing, all the polite things in society. Manners and just being polite. We're losing it. And it's we laugh about it. I sent it to a couple of my American friends and they were like, "Oh yeah, I think that's happening in Paris as well." And I'm like, it's everywhere. It's just everywhere.
It's as if, it was David Atherton. That was a bus in Birmingham, the second city in the UK, going into the centre. But it's as if the British way of living, of having manners, it's as if we've adopted another culture. That's kind of what it seems like. Am I well off the mark or not?
Well, what's the saying? Import the third world.
Yes.
From it, I laugh. Maybe because I don't take public transport because of this. Like, how is that safe? How is that safe if you're a little old lady, you want to go do your grocery shoppings? How is that safe? And it's more of like, you got to laugh or you're going to cry, because it's just like, what is happening to our country? How, what if you've got kids or you've got a pram and you've just got people piling on like that? No one has regard for anyone else. And it's, it is actually really disgusting to see. It's really disgusting.
Yeah, well, thank God for diversity. It's really helping our country massively.
Yeah.
Let's being sarcastic there, by the way, and in case any of our US viewers don't get sarcasm. Uh, let's Adam Brooks put this, and this is
Mm,
another part of the open borders that we have faced, and this is on crime figures.
yeah.
And he put recent Finnish crime figures by nationality: Somalians 6 times more likely to commit sexual crimes than Finns, Iraqis 10 times, Afghans, Congolese 12 times, Syrians 15 times. And you see some of the figures underneath. And it's the UK government won't publish ours. That is perplexing that often when you've got a problem, the government says they don't collect data on that area. Therefore, they don't have to talk about it because they simply
Mm,
ignore it. And we've seen it with the grooming gangs on the data they
yes.
collect. And obviously they don't want to put nationality because it would expose that we have a problem, not only in Finland, but I could bet that we have a problem here in the UK on the same issue.
Well, you know it. And this is the thing. It's, as you say, they're not going to collect it because they don't want to, have a freedom of information request and have to give out the data, because then when you talk about it, they'll start calling you racist for it. Oh, you're racist. How can you say that? Well, no. Look, here are the stats. So, if we've got the stats, you can't start using those words, which is what they do to try and shut the conversation down. And at the moment, I feel like we are really being sacrificed as women, um, to, on the altar of multiculturalism or diversity or whatever you want to call it. There are these people coming into this country that do not like our way of life. And if you go into their country and you look how unsafe their women are, and you look at the problems, and Somalia, Iraq, all of those places, Afghanistan, what they're doing with young girls, how they treat the women in their cultures and their countries, how they treat the young girls in their cultures and their countries. And we're bringing those people into this country whose culture does not align with ours, where, we used to be able to take it for granted that we'd be treated with respect and we'd be safe in broad daylight. There was just a lady raped by two men, near Solihull. It's a Solihull postcode, by two men, and we barely hear a word of that on the news. But then the mainstream media will talk about this very loved TV chef who made a few inappropriate jokes 10 years ago, and that's everywhere. And it's almost like a distraction. There's a celebrity, let's focus on him and some jokes he made because, it's bearable to think about. But the real harms that are happening to women, like, 8 a.m. in the morning, it happened. Two men, 8 a.m. in the morning in a park, broad daylight. It's not even dark at 8 a.m. in the mornings here. And this is what happened. And it's barely, it's local newspaper level.
It re-
And then they don't give it. Then there's a manhunt. This whole thing. Oh, we're looking for these two guys, but then there's no description.
yep.
And it's like, and as you said, with the Pakistani rape gangs, they really didn't want you to say that, and then they would kind of say like Asian to like pad it out a bit, but they didn't really want you getting into the specifics of all, because then you get called a racist. It's madness.
It's funny how information is forthcoming in some areas and some groupings with some backgrounds, and not with others. We'll touch on that more in a bit. But here's something else about women's rights being eroded in a completely different area. And this is James Esses or Esses. I never know how to pronounce it, but he has, with Kira Bell, who is an absolute heroine. So important notice announcement. Kira Bell and James Esses challenge proposed UK clinical trial of puberty blockers. Myself and the infatable. I didn't. I had to actually Google that. It just seems someone who does not give up, who will not take no for an answer, who just non-stop pushing what they believe, and that is Kira Bell, who's an absolutely, if you want to know more, that is Kira Bell's Twitter handle, X handle. Make sure and follow her. She took the government to court and won for the horrendous sexual abuse that happened, the whole trans industry. But they have instructed a legal team to write to the Health Research Authority, warning them that if the proposed trial goes ahead, they'll bring a claim for judicial review. And this is what we need to highlight the evils of our. We're seeing it in the US, and my concern is that we won't be seeing the same thing happen here. So thank God for James and Kira.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we're talking about puberty blockers. So we're talking about pubescent and prepubescent children here. What in the world are they doing? These puberty blockers, as they call them, are actually chemical sterilization methods. So the fact that they even want to do it here is like insane to me. And so good for these people for going and doing what they can, to try and get this stopped. Because as you said, we've seen it now in America where Trump just did the executive order. There will be no more, genitally mutilating children and giving children gender affirming care, which is actually these puberty blockers and chemical castration. So we've seen that in America. And then what you see is the outrage, the absolute outrage from those trans activists who were once saying, no, we don't touch children and and we're not doing anything with children. But it's like, well, the fuss that you're making shows that you absolutely have been and you absolutely are. So, it's great. It was great that Trump stopped it. Now it has to be the end of it here in England as well and Britain as well.
I think it will overflow, and as people are prosecuted in the US, and I think everyone who's participated in that should be jailed, and should not be allowed out in public for the evil. And following orders will be in line with views as we've seen under COVID. But for you to train as a doctor and then to just chop kids' bits off to inject them with a drug that you've zero long-term effects, that evil, these people have to be prosecuted and locked away and kept away from society, possibly forever, because you worry if they're out that they will continue this evil again.
Well, I've seen some of those doctors on TikTok literally bragging about, giving children, young girls, double mastectomies, bragging about it. And you think, wow, you're psychopathic. You're psychopathic. You would never see a cancer doctor that is literally saving somebody's life by giving them an operation like that. Ever go on TikTok and make a song and dance about having to do a mastectomy on a cancer patient. So why are they doing it with children? Children that don't even need it to be done, mutilating a kid, and they're joyous over it. It's quite unbelievable to see it and witness that. And it's real evil just manifesting itself right there.
It really is. We put up a meme, and it was, look, son, those people who cut off their son's dick think Elon Musk is going too far. The lunacy.
Oh, I need to retweet that. Yeah.
Sheer lunacy. Okay, let's go to the individual who cannot be named, and that's Tommy Robinson. And here is, and you've been, and I was going to say hats off to Leilani, but you don't need to take your hat off. But credit to you for actually standing up for Tommy, and it's been interesting seeing many people actually over time realizing the treatment of Tommy. And this is from his account. Important update on Tommy's treatment at Wood Hill High Security Prison. And I was there with Jared Batten a month ago. He's already spent 3 months in solitary confinement for a civil offence. Recently, he has many visits cancelled after, and phone calls and emails blocked. And now contact with his ex-wife, mother of his kids, has been terminated. And there seems to be crickets from anyone in the mainstream media, certainly, and any MPs. I think Rupert Lowe probably is the only MP who has highlighted some of the injustice. But to me, it is not right to do this on any individual to treat them like this, and solitary confinement for 9 months. Psychological warfare is really what the state
Yeah.
is participating. So what we've seen these regular posts because Tommy is locked away. Just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I think it's got worse and worse, but this is probably the worst to stop the mother of his kids, his ex-wife, from being able to see him. I mean, it's got really bad now, because I assumed, and I don't know if this is right, that he was in solitary confinement to protect himself, perhaps from gangs that might be there. But then, he should have been.
Because he was stuck in a Muslim prison with
Yeah.
35% Muslim. So, yeah.
Exactly. So there's that, which in itself, that is insane in itself that he wouldn't be safe. But then they've stopped. I know that, like, Dan Wootton was stopped, Lawrence Fox was stopped, Lewis Brackpool was stopped. A lot of people that he knows and his friends have been stopped. Quite a few, and some of them even agreed to sign NDAs. So they were worried, I think, that their line was that they didn't want anything going out onto podcasts, right? Which makes no sense to me. Why has it got to be confidential? Why is Tommy's conversation with one of his friends got to be confidential? Right? So that in itself is weird. But then to go the step further, and it be a family member, I mean, it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. What possible reason could they have to stop him from seeing the mother of his children? What next? His children? Like, where does it end?
I mean, he's locked away in solitary confinement, and Jared and I went through so many doors, went through so many X-ray machines, had to give her fingerprints nonstop to see him. So, I mean, he's not really going anywhere.
No.
So, and if you have to sign an NDA, as Jared and I signed, and therefore haven't done an interview on it, did with Johnny Wong, because he didn't sign an NDA for some strange reason. He got through that. But if you sign it and then you break it, then whatever the punishment is on that, if there can be a punishment. But it's weird being able to do that beforehand, especially if someone is willing to sign up to that.
Yeah. And so, I don't even. To me, it's thoroughly inhumane to stop him seeing once it starts getting to family. Like, I mean, it's bad enough with his friends, that's bad enough. I only think Jonathan Wong may have got through because I think Lewis had kicked up such a fuss about signing an NDA that they may have forgotten about it. But why anyway? That's all mad to me, because that only kind of kicked in a little bit later. You didn't really hear that much. You just heard, how was his spirits? People were talking like that on podcasts. Is he in good spirits? Is he okay? Is his mental health all right? But when somebody is for what he's, and by the way, I'll just say this to everybody as well: watch the documentary Silenced if you haven't seen it, because that's he shared that, and if that's the reason he went and got put away, then the least we can do is watch it and make sure we understand why they did not want that coming out. It doesn't surprise me, because what you see in that documentary will just blow your mind. I've said to everyone, if you want to understand why they're trying to shut him up, you watch it. Just watch the documentary and see how much it exposes about their corrupt, fraudulent, immoral behavior.
Yep. And for anyone to be locked away in solitary confinement for a minimum 9 months for showing a film in a category A section within the category B prison makes no sense, unless he really is an enemy of the state. That's the only way you can actually try and understand what he is being. That area full of rapists, murderers, and then someone who shows a film.
Right? Isn't that the most insane thing in the world? Like,
really
how
is.
they're putting him in with those kinds of people. It's just mad to me. It's so mad to me. But I think when he gets out, the next Unite the Kingdom gathering is just going to be the biggest and best, and will blow everything away. So I can't wait until he's out, and I will get myself to London and I will go and celebrate with everybody else who wants to go and celebrate.
with a video from Musk, I would expect the least
Yes,
video
at
from
least.
Musk, the least. Right, let's go. Here is the attack in Germany. And the headline was this was in Munich. Afghan asylum seeker arrested in Munich. Terror attack after car plows into protests. Originally, it was car plows into protesters. I mean, these pesky cars that keep driving into
Mm.
the markets in Germany. But yeah, shock one, you put asylum seeker, and shock two, comments off. It's as if they don't want conversation in this, Leilani.
They don't ever, do they? I mean, because people will say, well, what a surprise, you know? So the comments are all turned off, but you look at the next post or the other post, and if it's not about this kind of, if it's not about these kinds of atrocities, they'll leave the comments on. I'm sure there's comments on about if I haven't actually looked through, but I think I will. I'll try and see if they've got anything about Gino D'Acampo or something, the British personality, and I'm sure they'll allow comments on for discussion about that. But you know, these kinds of things, when it's an asylum seeker or an illegal,
And
or
and one who lost his case and therefore shouldn't have been in the country. So
oh, I
who's going to
didn't.
be charged for actually not getting him out?
Oh, I didn't see that. So there's
Yeah.
that as well. Well, there you go. So
It
he's
gets
there,
worse.
proper illegal,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's just, and how many more of them? How many more? I mean, I've forgotten where the last one was because there's just so many of them and all these like different names I have to try and remember. You know, I do remember the poor policeman getting stabbed. It was so quick and dying at a protest in Germany.
Yeah.
But then there was the other one, just where
Yeah.
another car plowed through into a group of people. And that
And
wasn't that long ago.
no, well, it was just weeks ago. And they've now announced a state of emergency. w- Only 8 days, 9 days away from a general election, where the AfD are going to do better than they've ever done before. And you think, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just as well, you can announce a state of emergency.
You know, honestly, this is what's really upsetting as well is the fact that I couldn't remember the last one where the
There's too
car went
many.
because there are so many now and it's happening so frequently. Whereas back in the day, something bad used to happen like that. And you'd remember the name immediately because it was so rare that how could you forget? But now it's just happening more and more and more.
As Sadiq Khan said, it's part and parcel of living in a city. That's what it is. So, and
No,
no one delves into it. Let's jump on to GB News, and I had a good catch up with Andrew Bridgen over the last few days. At something he posted this. GB News have now got the headline: "Shocking investigation." Well, it's obviously shocking to GB News, not to the rest of us. Pfizer and AstraZeneca, what they didn't tell you. Maybe the headline would be better titled "What GB News Didn't Tell You." But Andrew Bridgen puts up "Better late than never." Not when you're a national broadcaster and we're talking about the worst public health catastrophe of all times, how many lives were lost. And yeah, instead they chuck Mark Stein out. So it's better late than never isn't really better whenever all the damage and the deaths have been
right.
done.
No, and Mark Stein really was getting the message out there. And what they did to him and throwing him under the bus as their sacrificial lamb to Ofcom, you know, it makes me so angry. And, you know, I'm a huge, massive supporter of Mark. I was on Mark's show weekly on GB News. Once he left, once Dan had gone, that was it for me as far as GB News was concerned. But,
You're
you
definitely an
know,
extremist, Leilani. Definitely.
yeah. What they did to Mark was beyond horrific, and the way they did it was beyond horrific. And you know, they totally threw him under the bus. And I pointed out to Mark, who tried to point out to them that a lot of the complaints, and this happens across GB News still to this day because they haven't resolved it. What happens is most of those complaints that go to Ofcom are not organic complaints. They are one or two activists, one or two crazy people who put out to their Twitter followers, hey, report this show. here's the link, this is the time, this is what you need to write, this is the title of that day's show. And they have all these people just piling on, writing complaints in. And it's not an organic process that happens. And GB News should have stood up to Mark Stein, because he was probably one of the first people on national TV that got all the vaccine injured together to give their stories. He was giving a huge platform to two women one had lost her fiance, one had lost her husband, giving a massive platform to them to be able to speak about how it was for them to lose a loved one. Then he had a lot of people who themselves were vaccine injured on. I remember Jules Sirkin was on there quite a lot, and Jules I met in person, and she actually passed out and collapsed, and I was holding her up because she'd had it ever since the vaccine. She just faints and passes out and just goes black, and it's a neurological thing that's happened. So he was the first one really to give everybody a platform on a kind of mainstream channel, and they just cleared him out. So little by little, like Andrew Bridgen said, it's a little late when you couldn't stick up for your original people that were doing it.
And Mark Stein, one of those old style journalists. I mean, I followed him back 15 years ago whenever he was talking about Islam and the clash in Islam and the freedoms we have in the West. And then when he went to GB News and started talking about the jab, and was like, wow, someone who's not afraid to actually speak truth, despite it being against the prevailing narrative. And Mark Stein, absolute legend.
Yeah, huge fan.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to stateside. Mark Stein being UK, although kind of Canadian. But let's go to the US. And it's this story about Doge and what's happening. Breaking: Doge officials have just entered the IRS building in DC to begin their investigation in the agency. This comes after ex-users overwhelmingly voted for Doge to take it to the IRS just days ago. And see, it wasn't actually really over. It was 5141. But it's intriguing because there doesn't seem to be anywhere that Doge is not allowed to go to investigate into these government departments that have never had audits, and the waste that Musk is finding. It's the most. I mean, he is reducing the state in weeks with President Trump, more than probably Ronald Reagan did in 2 terms. But it's exciting. Doge employees, I get employees going to the IRS and beginning to go through the systems. It just every day, the good news continues, doesn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. We need one here. And that's another thing. I'm so envious of their Doge. It's remarkable. I saw what Elon tweeted the other day, where he said that he was really shocked. He thought it would be like a few $100 million, and it's turning out to be billions and billions of just waste. Taxpayers' money. Remember, the government does not have any of its own money. It's all our money. All the taxpayers' money that's being spent and being wasted. And you're thinking, hold on, why are they giving the BBC 3 million? Why are they giving Politico 8 million? What have you been buying? What? And then you're like, well, now I understand why the news is the way it is, and how biased it's been, and what the agendas it's pushing have been, and you kind of say, but I love that they're going into the IRS, and they should go into every single government institution, because there's waste everywhere. It's not just the NGOs. There's just waste everywhere. And you know what? I'm going to shout out to Charlotte Gill with Woke Waste UK and the procurement files. They're working together because they've kind of created this Doge in
the UK.
In the UK. And when you look at what they're pulling up, they're doing it for free. God bless them. They're doing it for free. So I think she's got something you can pay for, buy her a coffee or something like that. So when you look at some of the things, 73 million for translators for the NHS, 73 million. Then you're seeing these climate change, millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions. See these unbelievable climate change things in overseas, and these green things overseas. It's just nuts.
But we have to. There's a sad part of this, and that is people like Rory Stewart not getting their money. Let me just play this little clip of him.
Stopped. Doesn't matter. You have a contract. So, Turquoise Mountain, which my wife Shoshana runs, has a contract, had another $1 million to go. Money just stops.
That's, let me shift that. That's Rory Stewart with Alistair Campbell, two UK politicians. His money stopped, Leilani. It's so sad. His wife was getting $1 million. I guess $1 million a year. I don't know how long she'd been on that. It's so sad.
$1 million for what? $1 million for what? I think that's why I tweeted. Oh no, it's just stop. Good. Let's stop and let's see where all this money's going. Like, what's she getting that money for?
But the stupidity of actually going on a podcast and saying my wife got $1 million and now she's not. Are you thick? You really put that out in public.
I think they are. I honestly think they are.
It's so bad. But it is crazy how it's affecting the UK with that money being siphoned off. And I've seen that they're looking at possibly saving 1 to 2 trillion. It is phenomenal, the amount of money. And maybe like Javier Milei in Argentina, maybe they'll actually be able to balance the books. Who knows?
Yeah, especially if it's the IRS, they should be able to balance it, shouldn't they? We need to see. I say go into them all, and absolutely, we need one in Britain as well to start looking through all our government waste as well, because I feel like they just think they can do whatever they want. It's not their money; they're spending everyone else's. What is it going on? What expenses are they spending it on? And why? And why? It's so many backhanders. And you know what else I love? I love when Elon came out and he said, hold on a minute. There's somebody on a 200 grand a year salary who's now worth 30 million. How did she make that money? And you know what? If it's investing, we need to take her investing advice, right? We should listen to her. If she's made it from investing, I love that because, maybe she's so super smart that she can turn a 200 grand salary into 30 million over a few years. But I love that he's going to go in and he's going to look at all those people.
It's true. When a senator is getting 200,000 and some of them turn that into 100 million, that you need to follow their tips. That is the way to make money. So definitely track them. There are 3 more. Let's just touch on these. Let's just do a few minutes on each of these just to continue the madness. This is the Daily Mail obviously got their headline a bit wrong. Transgender woman appears in court accused of raping a girl under 13 and sexually assaulting a boy. And that on the right is the woman. Now, as a female, what are your thoughts on this? I'll hold back what I think. Leilani, tell me what you think.
No, I'm sick of it. I'm so sick to death of it. If you want to talk about misinformation and disinformation, it's putting the word woman in that headline. That is a man and always has been a man. And none of us should have to pander to an alleged rapist's wishes of what he wants to be called. Ever.
I'm wondering, because this was back in 2011, it says, where the woman was accused of abusing a young girl with their penis in 2011. And this is another part. This is 2025, so 14 years later. You'd think this would be dealt with, and it seems that our judicial system just doesn't want to deal with cases years and years later, and this should be sorted. I can't get my head around it.
I just cannot get around why we're seeing headlines like this of men being called women in a headline. It's so wrong, and especially when they're criminals, and especially when they're rapists.
Yep, it is pure evil and rewriting when truth is subjective and right is wrong, then you can do anything, and that's really what we are seeing. Here is another story on our legal system. Actually, going to go with this, and then we'll finish off with a not a trans story, but something even more crazy. But at least it'll give you a smile. This is a Muslim immigrant, Hussein, imprisoned a 13-year-old girl in his basement. He forced her to take heroin and raped her for a month. Hussein invited 7 more friends, and they continued. This was in Bradford, which is part of the epicenter of the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs we've seen. I was jailed for 6.5 years. And what we've seen is he will then be free in 3.5, serving half of that, and probably do the last year in an open prison. It seems to be that punishment doesn't fit the crime. Or am I missing something, Leilani?
No, I feel exactly the same way. I saw this, I looked it up, and I was horrified because I think there were 8 men, and they gave like the overall sentence, which was so low when you averaged it out between the 8 people. I think it was like, maybe I'm just pulling this off the top of my head. I think it was about 58 years between 8 people. Some of them had already fled the country, so they'll get nothing. But that's just such a small average. And I think one person did have over 10 years, but even so, they'll only serve half of that. And so you've got the lower end where this guy's got 6.5. But to put it in perspective, there was a man in the Starmer riots upset about little children being stabbed who went out and set fire to a wheelie bin, pushed it towards police. I want to point out that the fire wasn't in an asylum building. It wasn't indoors anywhere. It was contained within a wheelie bin, a plastic bin for American viewers with wheels on, outside, not a fire zone like Los Angeles, just to set the scene, a plastic bin in England, and he set fire to it. He got 9 years. 9 years. So you're telling me that the judges rule heavily for melting a plastic bin than they do on raping a underage child? It's sick. It's just sick. The judicial system in the UK is sick. It's not even a judicial system.
And one of the groups of cases, when you look at the sentencing, was an individual sentenced for 11 years for 9 counts of child rape. So again, work that out, and that's just over a year per rape. Is that really what we decide is punishment for these individuals? And yet there's no anger. The press report it. And you're right, they report 11 years. That sounds good. What, for 9 counts of rape? If you're looking at each one, surely it should be decades for each one, in which case they never get out. And yet these people are out after a couple of years.
No, it's wrong. The whole system here is broken. It's completely broken. And we've just got activist judges, and we don't have our system's a joke. It is clown world.
It is. Well, let's look at the last story, which is, again, bonkers story. But it kind of gives you a smile in a weird way. This is Reform MP Lee Anderson talking about llamas and the health service. Here's a 30-second clip. Utter common sense.
Mr. Speaker, now the new health minister has stated that it's okay for a human being to present as a llama. So what I want to know is, if I have a family member who presents as a llama, suddenly becomes ill in the middle of the night, do they send for a doctor, a vet, or a straitjacket?
Mr. Speaker, I can just say to the honourable member that my honourable friend, the Minister for Public Health, believes in treating every human being with the dignity and respect they deserve.
I would have said a straitjacket, or they need help, some mental help. And yet we pander along. It was such a good trick.
An asylum. But it's right. You know what, Lee Anderson, this is the thing. Sometimes you have to laugh at the insanity of it all, because otherwise it can drive you mad. But it isn't crazy to see that our Minister for Health had said that, if somebody wants to identify as a llama, we should respect that. I just want to know if llamas have to pay tax, because, because it could be calling me.
That's interesting. That is a whole other program in itself, Leilani.
Yeah.
Whether llamas have to pay tax, and if we self-identify as llama, whether we'd be exempt. You could be onto something. You could.
I just like to think ahead, you know. I just like to think outside the box.
That is thinking ahead. Leilani could lead a whole, I don't know, what do you call is it a flock of llamas? A pack?
Herd.
Herd. Herd. That would be the one. Well, on that ingenious thought from Leilani, Leilani, always love you coming on. Thank you so much for giving us your thoughts. And I think more or less all those stories are from your X feed, so it gives a flavour of what people can find. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.